Welcome to Upcycling with Deb. I'm your host, Deb Colameta. I wrote a #1 best-selling book called Best Offer, Best Life. And if you'd like to get a free downloadable guide, please visit my website, thedebsite.com. The other night, as I was putting my daughter to bed, I sat on her bed and I was looking around her room. I was noticing that there were certain areas of her room that get more use than others. And it made me think, if I could make a heat map of this space, what areas would be the brightest? What areas would be the most used? Because the cooler areas, the areas not being used as frequently, those are the areas where we tend to get clutter, I feel like, because you can push the things that you're not really using into a space that you're not really using. So when you think of your toy room or another area in your home that has low usage, what in those areas can you remove from your space altogether? The heat map of my home would tell an important story about where the rooms are and where the spaces are that we use most frequently. Zero in on the areas where nobody plays. Do you have a cabinet taking up valuable space in your kitchen with glassware that you simply never use? I did up until last week. I cleaned out a cabinet that was above my stove, super valuable real estate in the kitchen, and I kept crystal goblets in there. Now I have an empty cabinet above my stove, and I'm thinking about what can I put up there to clear off my counters where I can have access to it pretty quickly, but yet not have it visually in my space. If your home had a heat map, what are the areas that get used the most, and what are the items that don't get used at all? That's where I want you to start when you think about decluttering or selling your things online or starting to free cycle things. In my daughter's room, there were a few areas that had high traffic, and surprisingly, those were the areas that were more neat because that's where what she uses. And then those corners of the room that she doesn't use as much, the clutter tends to get pushed a little bit towards that area because it's not high traffic. It's not getting in the way of like her dollhouse, which she uses a lot, or her bookshelf. Those areas are pretty clean. But behind her door, where she has a lot of other things that she doesn't really use as much anymore, those areas were becoming kind of a catch-all for the things we don't really know what to do with. With my daughter's help and with her approval, we started to move some of the items that she didn't really use anymore into a large storage bin. I have the space in my garage to keep this type of bin, and I like to put the things in there that she may have a change of heart about as kind of a holding pen. I put the lid on the bin and I mark it with a label. If we have not opened this, if she has not asked for any of the contents in the next 3 months or however long we give it as an expiration date, then it's safe to donate or free cycle. Out of sight, out of mind. And I don't think she's ever asked for one of these items. That's step one of purging the space. And then for kids items, sometimes if you want to hang on to them for a specific amount of time, giving it an expiration date, a final date where you will actually give away or free cycle or sell the items in that bin, that's a great strategy. If you're like, well, I'd clean out their room, but I'm not sure if they're done playing with these items yet. That's a great way for you to get around it. It's the same with my son's room. A couple of years ago, he had some Star Wars items in his room, and we needed to create a little bit more space. They were in a nice box, and I put them in our shared toy area, and nobody asked for anything inside the box. So after probably 3 or 4 months, I decided it was time to pay it forward, give those items to another Star Wars fan. Nobody has asked about the contents of that box, and I felt great giving it to that other mom to give to her child to use. The things are probably getting used right now, and I'm not tripping over that Star Wars box. This is where you need to start when you're thinking about where do I where do I begin when I want to sell some items? Scour your own home for inventory and start in the cooler areas of that home heat map. Thanks for listening to this episode of Upcycling with Deb. I'm Deb Colometta. Head over to my website, thedebsite.com, for your free downloadable guide and connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at Deb Colometta. Thanks for hanging out.